Welcome to the Strategic Veteran, where we chart the course from service to civilian triumph. I'm Adam Peters, a veteran, entrepreneur, and your fellow navigator in the quest for a life of impact and fulfillment. My mission is simple: to empower you with the tools and stories that turn challenge into opportunity. Having walked the path from active duty to where I stand now, I understand the search for purpose that comes with hanging up the uniform. It's a path I've walked, with its trials, its tribulations, and its victories, and it's a journey we're on together. This podcast is more than just conversation. It's a beacon for those seeking to redefine our missions through entrepreneurship. It's about igniting the entrepreneurial spirit that lives within us, the spirit that compels us to create, lead, and make our mark on the world. Here we connect with veterans who have built businesses, sparked change, and found their purpose in the marketplace of ideas. They're not just surviving, they're thriving. They've transformed their service into startups, their experiences into enterprises, and they're proof that you can too. So whether you're scribbling business plans on napkins or stepping into the arena of innovation, remember, you're not alone. You're in good company. So let's explore these stories of transformation and take the first steps together on our path to purpose. Let's begin. Welcome to the Strategic Veteran Podcast, where we dive deep into the stories of resilience, transition, and personal growth. I'm your host, and today I'm incredibly excited to introduce someone whose unique journey has touched on themes that are core to this podcast. Our guest, Arnold Beeks, is a true Renaissance man with an impressive career spanning over 40 years. Arnold has spent his first 2 decades in the technology and organizational leadership space. Then he transitioned to the equally fascinating realm of psychology and personal leadership, dedicating his life to understanding the human mind and helping others unlock their fullest potential. Now, as he embarks on what he calls his next 20 years, Arnold continues his mission to serve others as a brain fitness trainer, helping individuals strengthen their minds for a healthier, more resilient future. Arnold's connection to service and resilience runs even deeper. Having grown up under the roof of a highly disciplined and authoritarian father, a military colonel, Arnold's early life was shaped by the expectations and structure of a military household. Later, he served in the Dutch military himself under mandatory service, including 2 years in a military prison unit, handling administration as a sergeant. Imagine the tension of being on guard with the looming threat of someone as dire as a prisoner being killed, a circumstance that shaped his mental fortitude in profound ways. But Arnold's story isn't just about enduring structural challenges. It's about breaking free, thinking for himself, and carving out a life of purpose and passion. His journey shines a light on the challenge of finding a suitable path after structured environments like the military, and how resilience and self-leadership can guide that transition. Through it all, he's remained steadfast in his mission to inspire others, not just to meet expectations, but to exceed their own on their terms. In today's episode, Arnold will share his personal insights on overcoming limiting beliefs, embracing mental fitness as a lifelong practice, and redefining what it means to lead, both personally and professionally. Whether you're a veteran seeking new purpose, or a leader navigating transition, or someone simply looking to cultivate resilience in your life, this conversation promises to leave you inspired and equipped with actionable wisdom. So stay tuned as Arnold and I explore the lessons he's learned from decades of evolution, reflection, and service. We're just getting started, and you won't want to miss it. Arnold, brother, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Adam. What a beautiful intro.
Yeah, brother. So a little different here. So today, where did you grow up, and what was it like growing up in a household, knowing that you're eventually going to have to serve in the military, but also having a father that is an authoritarian military style kind of commander? What was that like for you?
Very tough. I grew up in the Netherlands in a city called Amersfoort, which is a medium-sized city in the middle of the country. And when I was born, my father was already an officer. And like I said, and I didn't know that I had to go in what I think you call it conscription or whatever.
Yeah.
I obviously only knew that when I was 16, 17, 18, whatever, because the age where it was mandatory is when you're 18. When you're 18 and you're healthy, obviously, you were supposed to go into the military unless you had an older brother or a couple of older brothers already were there, but that doesn't count for me. But that was only the time when I realized that. And for me, it was later on because I was studying at the university. So then you get an extension. So I was not supposed to go when I was 18. I did go when I had finished I graduated from university.
Yeah. So growing up with a military father, did that in any way inspire you to want to serve, or was it the exact opposite? It kind of made you not want to serve because he was so rigorous and authoritarian like?
Yeah, actually the opposite. It and not only that I didn't like my father, but my father didn't like it very much either. So he was not always super excited, and when his experience, whatever, he was always talking about problems with his bosses and all the stuff. And obviously, as a kid, you don't understand much, but I could feel the energy. Yeah, so so that never passed my mind. And as I grew older, and as I'm now telling people, is you well, I consciously choose to be and do the opposite.
Yep. Yeah, don't we all, right?
Well, I think it is a healthy approach because we learn on all personal growth and development and everything is like, who's an example? Who do you want to follow? Who's a role model? Who's like, and people want to be Tony Robbins or Henry Ford or doesn't matter which name you choose, or they want to be Barack Obama. I don't care. Yeah, but it like that is actually quite demotivating because you can never be like those people. It's totally impossible. And one of the main things what I'm teaching people and helping them with is that each human being is unique. So choosing to follow someone because he or she has had some success for some kind of reason is really BS because that person is unique. So you can never do the same as that other person. Yeah?
I agree. I agree with this 100%. It's often, we see it in creating on LinkedIn or any social media platform. What you see is the results of years and years or months and months of hard work. You don't see all the stuff that they did to get to where they're at. You just see where they're at now, and you want to be like them. But you're just getting a snapshot of what their life is actually like. What it took to get there. Is that kind of where you're going with that one?
Yeah, it's because, but it's also, I think mostly is unconsciously they're not sharing everything. Yeah, so
Correct.
yeah, and they didn't know that they made a decision which was usually has a huge impact, but they didn't know that, so they don't share it. Huh?
Yeah. Yeah.
But even let me make it simple. I'm born in the Netherlands in Europe. I'm totally convinced that my life would have been totally different if I would have been born in the US. Yeah, so it's like even if everything would have been the same, it is different.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, absolutely. We're all unique individuals, and that's kind of like what makes you you. Is nobody can replicate you. So lean into your uniqueness and kind of follow that path in life, right?
Yeah, and that is why I say it's for most people, and it was for me. I did the same. Yeah, when I started my own business and whatever, well, you know, all these books is like how to become rich, how to be a millionaire in 6 steps. I did this with. I followed all of them, and I succeeded in none. Yeah,
Right.
and that has a huge impact on my self confidence. And like, oh, maybe being an entrepreneur is nothing for me, or I couldn't do that, or maybe I'm just too stupid for this, or whatever. Yeah, so it like, but it wasn't until I realized, like, no, I'm unique, they're unique. And the other thing is, like, I must not try to be like the other one. What is much more motivating is to see, I don't want to be like this person. So you would, coming back to my father, and although I'm totally convinced he had good intentions, but in everything, if anyone now would come up to me and say, well, maybe they say I would look like my father a bit, but it like you're just 100% like your father, I'm gonna kill myself because it's like it's like I totally don't want to be like my father.
You've done everything in your life to not be like your father, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I totally understand. So you get to age 16, the conscription thing, having to serve comes on your radar. How are you feeling in that moment? Is it kind of one of those disgusting feelings in your gut, like I really don't want to go do this? Or is it like, hey, this is the next challenge. This is just something that I have to do. I'm going to make the most of it. I'm going to go serve, honorably and move on from there. What was that like for you?
Well, I was so that extension was whatever. So it was when I was 18. I get the extension, and I started on the university studying. So it was totally out of my mind. But then when I was finished, I was like, oh yeah, I, I need to go. So I was 24, and I had to do that. Not going there, as you implied, is not an option if you're the son of an officer. It like, yeah.
Yeah.
And I was still dependent on my father. So it like, yeah, he paid for the university. Yeah, well, for my house, for the food, or whatever. Yeah, so when everything, I was not earning money, so I was dependent on him. So it was not wise to fight with him because then I would be living on the street. So it's like that. So I knew I had to do that, and well, Susan, I don't well, I know why they put me in the military prison because I finished law school, so that made things well. Maybe I assumed that my background and that made they put me like that.
So let me
But
ask you
I
this.
was not looking forward to that. Well, number one, I had no clue how it was supposed to be, but on the other hand, I was offered a grant to go to the US to study at some kind of university because I get very good grades at university. And I said, oh, it was the Rotary or something like that. They offered me a grant to come study there for a year. And I was like, holy moly, I want to do that. Eh?
Yeah.
Uh, uh, uh.
Got to serve first, huh?
Yeah.
So how does it work? Like here in the United States, if you go to college, you get a 4-year degree, then you can commission into the military as an officer. So was that an option for you in the Dutch Army, or is it straight to enlisted? How do you become an officer? You have to serve some amount of time, or did college help? Like what is that?
No, there was I don't know the English word. There's an assessment which you have to go through, and based on the assessment, they determine whether you can become an officer or not, or whatever. And because I had university, it could be an officer, but I became a sergeant because they put me in military prison. What all the deliberations were, I didn't know, and I was obviously a lot older than an 18-year-old. Yeah?
Right, right. Right. No, that makes a ton of sense. So, what was your service? How long was your service? What was it like for you? Was there any aspect of it that you enjoyed? And I mean, if you had to do it all over again, would you have served still?
I I still think because there's now discussion in a lot of countries in Europe because the conscription, which was in Netherlands and in Germany and in France and the UK, well, not in every country because I think in the UK they used to have a professional army for most of the time, but a lot of countries had conscription, and then I don't know when at some point in time they stopped it, so it became a professional army. But the I still think that for a lot of people it would be a good thing because especially well, and I would say not for me because it's good for discipline, it's good for being in a team, it's good for doing something completely different than you're used to, yeah? But for me, I've been in military service for 25 years to my father, yeah?
Right, right, right.
Yeah,
No, I
so being disciplined and whatever for me was easy peasy. So yeah.
yeah, you didn't need the structure. You had grown up with all that. Because I'm of the opinion here for the United States, I really do think we should take some kind of conscription approach. I think that it would help. I learned this after my career, 13 years in the Army. I joined because college wasn't for me at the time. I went to college in my 30s after I got out, and college was so much, school in general was so much easier. After I had some life experience, I'd gained that discipline. I kind of came up with this philosophy. College wasn't designed for kids right out of high school at 18 years old. Like, you need to go get some life experience, learn how to manage some time, have some responsibility, and then you can come back and you can excel at college. Because I was a mediocre student in high school, and I was a really good student in college. I getting my associate's degree in professional pilot, 4.0 straight A's, like incredible. Never achieved that in my life. And then in my bachelor's degree, like, top of the class or whatever also. And I think it's really just because I had life experience. I had, at that point, almost 5 years of combat time, 13 years in the Army, right? Like, I had a lot happen to me in my life that kind of prepared me for that. And so I'm, particularly looking around at like kind of the state of society today and like where things are at, I think these young kids could benefit from, mandatory service in the military. Give them, something to serve bigger than themselves, teach them a little bit of discipline, give them some life experience. I think that it could overall be a good thing, but also having the love that I have for the Army and wanting to protect kind of the continuity and the quality of soldier that we're putting into the military, I could see where that'd be also a challenge, right? Like, if you're forcing people in your case, you didn't need any of that stuff. You didn't really want to be there. I can see how that could be a problem too. So what was that like? Like, you mentioned professional Army when they got rid of conscription, right? A professional military. Do you think that it's kind of detrimental to be forcing people who may not want to join into the military? And do you think it brings the level of readiness down? This is a tough question, huh?
Well, it's not a black and white answer. It has I when I look at today's youth, they definitely would need something like that, or it could be something like well, this whole other story when people didn't show up, whatever, and they were caught by the military police, they would have to do more like a social service. Yeah, so I'm in favor of whether it's the military or social service that you do something for the community, and I intentionally use the word community, and that is a good thing, and it's also like meeting other type of people because I grew up in a, I would say, middle class family. Yeah. Um, when you're at university, and especially I went to university in the 70s, 80s. Yes, it's like then university. Now everybody goes to university, but then 70s, 80s, it was quite exceptional. Yeah, so and the people and the friends you have there, it's a certain level of society, and but when I get into the military, and especially with some of the prisoners or whatever, I get an experience with a whole other part of society,
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
which
and
I hadn't encountered because I lived in a protected environment.
yeah. Well, and I like what you're talking about with this too, because exposure, particularly here in the United States, I think, and just this is a broad generalization, but I've seen on social media, a lot of UK guys come to the United States and then they post on social media talking about, I didn't realize how big the United States is, right? So somebody like me who grew up in southern Indiana, all I know is the farm towns, right? The military exposed me to people from California, from Washington, from Florida, from other places that I had never been, and it kind of just it shows you the different cultures and the different ways of upbringing, and kind of exposes you to all of these things, which are, I think, ultra beneficial to the development of us as human beings, as people, as personalities, as whatever. And I'm so grateful that I got that opportunity to be exposed to people who grew up in Compton, California, and then people who grew up in upstate New York and kind of the Hamptons area with money, and you get all that diversity, and it really gets to shape you. I think that's amazing. So how many years did you actually end up serving in the military? 2 years. So after 2 years, kind of moving into the transition piece, and I don't know how the transition was for you, particularly kind of being forced. 2 years is not a long time, but what I've noticed in almost 100 episodes of this show is the transition is rough because we, as military veterans, we get so kind of wrapped up in our identity becomes the military, the uniform, the mission, all of that. And that's our purpose. And in my case, joining at 17 years old, getting out at 30 years old, I was a child essentially when I joined and an adult when I get out, but I'm not really an adult because I don't know who I am without the Army. Did you experience anything like that when you were getting out, or did you just ready to be done and move on with your life?
Yeah, well, it was known up front. Yeah, so it's like you either had, if you're a soldier, you had to go 14 months, but I had to go 18 months or something like that. Yeah, so it's like, so it has a beginning and an end. Yeah, so that obviously had an impact. Yeah, but for me, it was then that I had to, well, like, start my working life. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
it's like, hey, I got my university degree, I did my thing. Is it, what am I gonna do now?
Yeah. So for you, that looked like moving into the technology and organizational leadership space. For 20 years. You did leadership and technology, organizational leadership and technology. How did you end up in that area of business, and what was that like for you? What did you take from the military that said, hey, this is a career for me, this is what I want to do?
I had no clue.
You just fell into it. I like that. I like that a lot because it's honest, man. And that's kind of the point of this show, right? Like I have this philosophy: veterans need to, sit with themselves, figure out who they are, discover what their core beliefs, values, and passions are, and then pursue something in the form of a career or building a business that's in line with those three things. And I think the process of getting there is different for everybody. And so, we all go through the challenges of finding a job when we get out, or, deciding what kind of business we want to build or whatever. But, falling into things happens. I mean, pleasant surprises happen all the time. And it's really cool that it sounds like you fell into something that you really enjoyed with the technology and organizational leadership. Or did you
Well,
just kind of stick it out because it was paying the bills?
I had, and that was also, which I wanted to come back about, you doing some kind of service is helpful. Um, before I, well, my father told me, like, Arnold, you have to go to university. He told everything. He never asked anything. Yeah, so like, you have to go.
Everything was in order.
Yeah, everything was in order. So I was like, I had no clue what it was. So, but when I heard, it's like, you get to live outside of the house and somewhere else, and you do, I'm like, I'm in. Yeah, so
Right.
and by then, which is, I still think it, and I still meet so many people, it's a stupid question to ask a 17, 18-year-old, what do you want to do? What's your career? What is your life? Whatever. You don't know.
I totally, we are in 100% agreement on that because, man, at 17, 18, you're still a child. You're still coming out from underneath the wing of your parents. You have no life experience. How can you really know what you want to do? You have not been exposed to any of these career choices, fields, whatever. Like, there needs to be some kind of something, to give us that experience. I agree with you 100%, man.
And so yeah. Well, I made a choice at university. Is I first started doing economic because I thought, oh, my father's with the government. I don't want to work with the government. So like, oh, maybe business is interesting. Oh, I study economics, business economics. Okay, I had no clue. I knew nobody who works in business. Yeah, that's what it is. After 1 year, I said economics is totally lousy. They don't understand. If I look at the news on TV, if I read the newspaper, it's totally opposite what they tell me in the study economics, what economics is supposed to do. So I was like, after 1 year, I stopped and I was like, then my father, he was studying law in his spare time. So he said, why don't you go and study law? And I had a bit of an idea because he was studying it. Yeah. And I loved it because it like, it sounds, well, at least in the Netherlands it was that way, that it is very specific because you're going to be this and this. I always say a law study is like a continuation of high school. Yeah, you get I get things from statistics to economics to penal law to civil law, all these kinds of things to EU law. And whenever it's like, I was like, oh, this is really interesting. And I'm a curious guy. That's still driving my life. Curiosity is very important for everybody. Yeah.
I love that you're touching on that. Being a lifelong learner or a polymath is, the word I like to use. It's imperative to living a great life, whether that's, being the best career, climb the corporate ladder guy, or be, the best business builder, for yourself that you can be. I really believe being a polymath, constantly learning new things and then implementing those things into your life it's imperative to success.
Well, I totally agree. That's why, well, I still call it a generalist. It's the same. We have the same intention, but it's like, I was like, when I was at school, is like, well, maybe I should choose this direction and this topic and this, so I can have multiple options. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I had my law thing, and in Netherlands, well, I think in the US it's the same. Is like, even if so I got a master's in law, but it doesn't mean I can be a lawyer, because for that you had to do
Here you have to go take the bar.
or whatever, you have to go at the law and do some kind of internship, which takes years and years before you are a lawyer. Yeah?
Right.
So people think if you have your law degree, you're a lawyer. No, you cannot. Or a judge, you have to go 4 years as an extra training. So it like, I'm like, I was 20, 25. I was like, I learned enough. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, let's move into what you're doing now, man, because I'm fascinated by you. You've mentioned you have a desire to A, live your life on your own terms, and B, spend the next 20 years helping others with brain fitness. And this is so important. And I want to spend a lot of time talking about brain fitness and all of that stuff. So let's talk about how you got here. How did you get to this realization, like, I need to help people with brain fitness? How did this come about?
Like everything
Like everything, yeah.
it's not one clear path and one goal.
Yeah. Obviously, I set you up for that one because there's not one clear path, but something inside of you, this had been brewing for a long time. I suspect that you had some kind of inkling that you needed to move into this space, and so I'm curious, like, how did you found this business? How did you come up with some kind of framework for people to follow and all of that stuff? Because I'm learning so much about brain fitness. My bachelor's degree is half in psychology. I loved psychology in school. I think that it's ultra useful even in business to this day. So I want to hear the whole thing, man. How did you arrive here? I know it's a series of decisions, but what got you into brain fitness?
Well, there were 4 episodes in my life which culminated in what I'm doing right now. One was that in my family where I grew up, my father was extremely authoritarian. Yeah, that is some kind of mental health condition. Yeah, my sister had developed then epilepsy and depression, which was only officially diagnosed a few years ago, but she already had it as a teenager. My brother had anger issues and he ran away, and my mother was just like, not my business. So I grew up in a family which would now be labeled dysfunctional, and with most people having some kind of mental illness. Yeah?
That's what I was just thinking as you were describing that, dysfunctional, right? Just everybody's got something going on up here that's not getting attention that it needs.
Yeah. So that is one part. Another moment is when I started working in the corporate world. I saw that it doesn't matter at which level people work, is that everyone, I literally mean everyone, can do and be so much more than what they're currently doing.
I agree. I agree. So I had an experience last year that unlocked that for me. And my whole life, I was never giving myself credit for the things that I was capable of. And that's the biggest wake up call I've ever had. And since then, I've built everything that I have. So I agree with what you're saying 100%. Everybody is so much more capable of putting more out than what they think they are.
Yeah, and then that so what is now labeled a coaching leadership style. It was not when I started, but that is what I did. Yeah. So because the command and control thing would have been very easy for me, but I didn't do that because I hated myself. So I'm not going to do that.
And I'm only laughing because I was the same. I hated myself. I was the hardest person on myself. We oftentimes are, that narrative in our head, that little voice just beating us down constantly. I agree 100%. I was that way.
Yeah, so I didn't want to do that. So that's why I developed the coaching leadership style. And that's why my first management job was a marketing manager with 10 marketing specialists. But at some point in time, I managed 6,000 people. Yeah, so it's like I was extremely successful in that part, just because I treat people as people. Yeah? That was a thing where I noticed is like people are not the label they are. People are not the position they are. People, if you treat them like human, if you get to know them, whatever, they can do so much more. Huh?
I love this, man.
Yeah. That was the second moment. The third moment is when I, let's call it, relocated, and I ended up in Budapest in Hungary. So moved from the Netherlands, ended up there, where I started working with young people, teenagers, people in the 20s, some at the beginning of their 30s. And it really struck me that this was 9, 10 years ago. It struck me that all of them either have experienced some mental problems like stress, burnout, depression, and all of them, I'm not kidding, all of them knew someone who had committed suicide. This was 9 years ago, and they were not only Hungarians, there were people from India, from France, from all over the world. Eh? And this was like, I'm like, when I was that age, that was not an issue. Eh? And I knew them well enough that they were not exaggerating or kidding, whatever. It's a really, really serious problem. So that was the third encounter. The fourth one was, again, coming back to my family, is that I helped my sister, because well, she had a breakdown at her work, and that's when she was finally diagnosed with depression, which she had already as a teenager, but now she was mid-50s. So, but then they put her into the traditional, what they call, mental health trajectory. It's not mental health, it's mental illness, where they want to give you some medicine to numb you down, and they want to send you to some behavioral classes. And actually she got worse because of that. And then they pushed her because some utilization. Oh, I did this training, I didn't like it, didn't work. Well, do it again. It's like I had to go with her to that institution and talk to the leadership there, which was shocking because, well, I studied, like yourself, a lot of psychology, neuroscience, and whatever. I knew 3 times as much as these guys. Yeah. And they were pushing things, and I was just telling, like I'm sharing, is like, you only look at your utilization numbers and not how your client is doing. Yeah. And well, it was horrible. So and that's when my idea for brain fitness was born. I was back on my bike. I'm Dutch, yeah, everything biking. So I was on my bike, and I was like, this is not helping people. Huh? And actually, while me and my sister were waiting for the meeting room to be open, we were standing outside, and my sister saw some people which she had shared a class with, and she told me is like 2 other people were in the class that committed suicide. So I told that to these guys, like, hey guys, you say you're successful, but I just heard there are 2 people suicide, so it's not so successful, is it? So I was on my bike. I said, that's where I get the idea, is like we work on body fitness, We work on exercise. Everybody understands now that it's healthy, that it's necessary, that you must do that. Not everybody does it, but most people. Most people understand it. Whatever. We need to be working on brain fitness from a preventive point of view, because the moment you get in that situation, you're screwed.
Yes, sir. I agree. So, what are the fundamentals of brain fitness, and
The, the
what are the
last
areas
part,
that?
to continue my thing for
Yeah,
your
yeah,
story, the last thing is like the last 8 years, I took care of my mother who had developed dementia and Parkinson.
that one's tough. We're going through it in my family. My wife's grandmother has got Alzheimer's, and it's been pretty stable for the last year, but it's starting to fall off a cliff, and you can see the toll that it's taking on her family and even on her grandmother, and it's tough. It's tough.
Yeah, I was the only care provider. Yeah? So dealing with my mother 7 by 24. Yeah? So all of those things combined, that's why I'm like, we need to focus on brain fitness, because also with these elderly diseases, a lot of it can be prevented.
Yes, sir. Yep. Yeah, I agree. So realizing that you got to focus on brain fitness, I assume there's some key areas that you coach people or like to focus on in order to build that brain fitness. You've mentioned a couple of them. I think physical fitness is definitely one of them. Sleep is probably a big one. Some kind of mindfulness or meditation practice is probably another one. Am I right here?
Yeah, well, it's just a matter of labeling, but it's actually, I focus on mental, emotional, spiritual, physical, environmental, and social aspects.
Yes, dude. So when I first started this show, one of the early podcasts I went on, and this may get lost in kind of the translation, but when we go into the military here, we have a process called MEPS. It's where everybody goes. It's Military Entry Processing Station. And my good friend Matthew Banco, who runs the Acknowledge to Action podcast, when I went on his podcast, he introduced me to a MEPS that gets out. And for the transition, that acronym stands for mental, emotional, physical, social, and spiritual, the 5 pillars of things that you need to work on in order to live a better life and transition better. And it's just so cool because those 5 things are just in line with your 5 things, or your 6 thing.
Yeah, I'm adding an X now, so I call it MESPAS X. Yeah, but it's like, yeah, because there's so much mythical, magical things happening, which are labeled paranormal or whatever, which have a huge influence. But it doesn't matter. We mean the same thing, Adam. Yeah?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So how does your program work? What you get a client? What can people expect when they come to you and work with you as far as brain fitness? How do you coach them through getting better at these areas?
Well, I got a 15-week training program.
Okay, I like
Yeah.
this. For almost 4 months.
Which has one 90-minute session every week. But obviously, in the period in between, you're supposed to do your own work. and
That's the key, people. You have to put in to get out.
yeah, you have to put in the effort. And if you do nothing, well, and after 15 weeks, well, you will get something out of it. But the more you do it, the more you get out of it. Yeah, it's just simple as that. Yeah, so it's like. And there are 6 steps which are called the 6 R's. Yeah? It starts with number 1 is reveal, and reveal is the cage in which we all operate and the straitjacket strategies which are limiting us.
Yes, sir. I like this.
I've identified 32 different straitjackets. Of most people have most of them. Not all of them. It could be, but like, yeah, I had all of them. Yeah, so it's like, yeah.
Well, and I'm sure, identifying these 32 straitjackets, this is probably just completely lost on people until you start doing work on yourself, and then you start to identify these things that are holding you back. Is that how it worked for you?
Yeah, well, that's why I call step 1 the reveal, and the reveal is basically around awareness. Awareness around how society puts us in a cage.
Yes. Yeah, because it's true. I call it a box. You call it a cage. I refuse to play in that box. I'm going to operate outside of that box because I spent 38 years of my life being pushed into that box by people in my life who thought they were doing what's best for me based on society's expectations, based on how they were raised. And I'm sorry, it's going on 2025. It's time to make some fucking changes here. And I don't have to play in this box. Society has said that I have to play in this box since the Industrial Revolution. I can make my own way outside, and I love where you're going with all this, man.
And one well, there are a lot of definitions, but the main thing, what I call a cage, is that the cage is you need to have a job. In order to have a job, you need to consume, because you need to have a house and food and water and electricity and heating and whatever. And then you need entertainment, because the other two are lousy activity. It's like, yeah. But you still need a job, otherwise you cannot go on holiday or fishing or camping or whatever, or have a dog to go walking. So it's like, it's a loop where you cannot get out. Yeah?
Mhm.
That's what I call a cage. Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, and on top of that, those 32 different straitjacket strategies, where I say it is like, from the moment we're born, we're put in that cage. From the moment we're born, we're made to be someone who we are not. Yeah. I call that fitting in. You got to fit into the box. You got to fit into the life. Yeah. That is what our educational system does. That is what religion does. That is what business does. Yeah. That is what the government does. They all wanna put you in a situation where you are not Adam, you're not Arnold. No, you're a cock in a machine to
Yeah.
do what other people want you to do. Yeah.
Yes, sir.
You're what I say, fitting in means you're living someone else's life. You're not living your own life, which is what I call flying out. That's the stage where you are now. Is like, I move from fitting in to flying out. That's my first training. Yeah. It's like helping people to realize, is like, I've been living the life of my father, or of my parents. I'm living the life of my teachers. I'm living the life of my priest, my imam, whatever. I'm living the life of my boss. I'm living the life of my spouse. It's like, you're constantly meeting expectations from other people, and you're drilled that that's normal.
Right. You're not setting any expectations for yourself and following those, and that's detrimental to who we are as people. Yeah, for sure.
Exactly, but we don't realize that. Yeah, you realize that. I didn't realize that. You didn't realize that. Yeah,
Right.
yeah,
Yep. For
yeah.
sure.
So that is a process where I think that so many people are addicted, unhappy, distracted, whatever, because it's lousy to live someone else's life.
I agree. I like I said, when I discovered that I could live my own life and everything was going to be okay, I immediately felt better not trying to meet somebody else's expectations. And to your point, I think I realized it a little bit, but I didn't really grasp the whole concept of like, I'm doing all of this because everybody else says so. I'm not doing anything for myself. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I was in the beginning of my 40s. You were 38. I was in the beginning of my 40s when I had my first coach, and I had the perfect storm of all kinds of shit and whatever. And I was saying, although I was very, from the outside, very successful in the business world, it's like, well, like, Arnold, what do you want? Yeah, I don't want this. I don't want this. I don't want. That's everybody you ask. Everybody knows what they don't want.
But they don't know what they want. That's the
No,
problem.
he
Yeah.
asked me, and I said, Arnold, but what's it that you want? And I'm like,
Yeah. And that's the epiphany that I keep trying to, when I work with veterans and all the content that I create, this show, it's like, what do you want? That's what I mean when I say sit down with yourself and figure out who you are as a person and what resonates with you. What are your beliefs, values, and passions? Like, stop running away from those. Stop being scared of that. Sit with yourself and figure those things out.
Yeah, but that is a whole trajectory because again, at least until you're 25, everybody, well, 95% of people are conditioned in that way, so nobody knows. Yes, that's why what you want to go for your vocational training or university or job, whatever, nobody knows because nobody cares. It's like we just train you to be an obedient cock in a machine. And what you're doing ensures that other people make a lot of money. So it's like, and for most of the people, unfortunately, that counts until the rest of their life. And what I do with brain fitness is to help people from fitting into flying out and start living your own life.
I love it, man. What's been the most rewarding aspect of working in the brain fitness space and working with people and opening that up for them?
Yeah, I like the word which you use. It's opening up. Yeah, it's like it's like, oh, I was in a cage. Oh, I'm really being manipulated, conditioned to behave in a certain way, which is not me, or is not what I love to do, or is not what I can do, and then a whole world opens up. I told before, it's like in material terms, I was a successful corporate guy, and I thought I knew a lot. I knew nothing. Yeah, when I was at the beginning of it, it's like, yeah, like emotional, spiritual, physical, how the world works, how everything's being run, whatever. I was like, I really knew nothing.
Yeah. Yeah. I saw a video last night, in fact, and I think this is super relevant. It was a clip from the Diary of a CEO's podcast, and he's doing this wonderful interview. I haven't had a chance to watch the whole podcast yet, but this clip talks about this study where they put these people in a room and they ask them how lucky they feel, right? And so the people who said they were lucky, then they give them a task is go through this book and count all the images. And on like the third or fourth page in this book, there's a big headline that says there are 40, or it says stop counting. There's 42 images in this, test or whatever. And the results were astonishing. The people who self-proclaimed that felt lucky, every single one of them picked up on that headline, handed the book back when they got to that page and said there's 42 images in this thing. Every single one of the people who said that they were unlucky missed the headline and made more errors counting the images. And it's perspective, it's belief in oneself, it's how do we think and feel about ourselves that physiologically change the way we look at the world. Isn't that cool?
Yeah, well, I started in step one about the process of six. Yeah, one was the reveal. Midway, a process is what I call reset.
Yeah.
And reset the lens is like, well, I wear glasses most of my life, but it's like, I think they're transparent glass. Well, there are a lot of scratches on them, but it's like, imagine they're purple.
Yeah. Yeah.
So for me, the whole world is purple. You're purple. Your shirt is purple. Everything purple. No discussion. What are you talking about? It's white. Don't be an idiot. It's purple.
Yeah.
And another one says it's blue. So it's like, that is what you're describing. Is like, if I look with the lens, with the perspective of my life is lousy, I have to count the images, blah, blah, blah. You're not interested. You're not paying attention. You're just doing as you're told.
Yeah, 100%, man. Definitely. Yeah. So there's 6 R's, you said. So the first one was reveal. The second one we kind of skipped over. The third one is reset. What's the second one?
The second one is recover. Recover from addiction. Most people are addicted to something or someone.
100%. Yep.
And suppression. Suppression. By suppression, I mainly mean our emotions.
We don't like to feel our emotions, do we?
Well, it's part of the conditioning because, well, in certain cultures there's difference between men and women, whatever. But it's like, we men, we're not supposed to show our emotions. We're not supposed to cry. We're not supposed to say you make me feel lousy or whatever. It's like, we don't care. So it's like, from a very young age, even if you fell from your bike or whatever, and you get a bloody knee, like don't cry, like boys don't cry. It's like everything is like you're supposed to suppress your emotions, which I say, which happens sooner or later in your life. It's like you're in a swimming pool and you have a ball and you press that ball on the water. The first 10, 20 seconds is a piece of cake. Yeah, but now do it 5 minutes. Yeah. So at some point in time, you cannot hold it anymore. Doesn't matter how strong you are. Bam! It explodes out of the water. That's your emotion going crazy. Yeah. So, second step is recover from that. Yeah, but also recover from seeing, and to the addiction. It doesn't mean heavy drugs or things with it, but it, like, for instance, I drank alcohol because everybody drank alcohol or drink coffee or whatever. It's like everybody, nobody's in. But unless you realize, like, I need to stop drinking alcohol.
Yeah, for me, it was sugar. I was addicted to sugar, and we have a big problem with added sugar in our food here in the United States. And man, as soon as I beat that addiction, I lost 100 pounds just from
Oh,
changing my diet. Like,
wow.
that's kind of, and I didn't, at least for me, my perspective on addiction was drugs and alcohol. I didn't think of addiction in terms of being addicted to people or being addicted to a location or being addicted to a substance that's in your food. And like broadening that perspective opened my eyes to certain things, and then I was able to make the changes that I needed to make. So addiction
What do you
expands.
think about these things?
Oh God, particularly trying to build a business, it's getting even worse because I was born in the mid '80s, so I was born in '85. So I'm largely one of the last generations that made it from childhood to 18 years old without electronics being readily available in my pocket. And so, being addicted to a cell phone, I mean, it's really easy now because I've had one for almost a little over 20 years since I was a private in the Army, and they just keep getting better. It's a computer in your pocket. I've been pretty diligent my whole adult life about not being addicted to a phone, but now that I'm trying to build a business and social media is a big part of that, there's an element of it where like I have to be really cautious at night. Like my phone charges in my office. It's not in my bedroom anymore. So, I have very specific things that I get up and do in the morning. I have a whole routine that I do in the morning, and touching my cell phone is not one of them. And that's on purpose because I know that I use it too much and it's detrimental. It's not good.
Yeah. So that's step two. Step three is to reactivate our mental, emotional, spiritual, environmental, and social aspects. Yeah? Because most of them are ignored. We didn't even know they exist, or whatever. It is like start to activate them because they are there, but you're not using it. Yeah? Yeah? Then the next step is reset, as we discussed, is that look at the world through literally different glasses. Eh? Then the next step is relearn knowledge, skills, mindset. Eh? Because when you look at the education system in most countries all over the world, because I talk with people all over the world, is basically the same as when I went to school, which were in the 70s. So it's like, and so people are not learning the skills which they need to learn. They don't get the knowledge or instead of the knowledge is like, well, use your AI or your calculator. So people cannot calculate, people cannot write because they let AI write. Yes, so, well, I can have a rant for hours, but it's like you need to gain your own knowledge. You need to gain your own skills. You need to find a mindset is like most people I talk to, and I'm inclined to say all, Adam, everybody feels not good enough because that is the system to make you obey. Is we all the time criticize you and tell you you're not good enough.
Yep.
Huh?
They're putting you in a classroom for 8 hours a day, feeding you the things they want you to know. They're training you how to be and operate in that cage that you talked about. It's conditioning you from the time you're a young child to the time you're 18 years old. So 5 here,
Yeah, but
13 years of
work is the
conditioning.
same. Yeah, you
Yep.
get performance reviews and
Yeah.
you get everything. It's like, but imagine I had to school that thing, but when I was at home, my father did the same. He was like, "Oh, you didn't clean that up right. You need to do this. Oh, you're eating not correct. You should be doing this. You need to polish my shoes. Yeah, oh, that was not correct. You need to cut the grass. It should be done better." Yeah, all the time. So I had 24/7 in my life. Yeah.
Yep. Yep. I'm with you.
Yeah. So reactivate. The last step is based on all of that, recreate. Recreate your life, your work, your learning, your business, your relationship, because now it's time for you.
Yeah. Which one of these steps would you say you find people struggle with the most? If I had to
Well,
guess, I would say
it's the
relearn.
most, the reveal step is the most powerful, but also it's the most limiting because it shows you is like it's now my turn. Yeah. And it's like that is another thing in which we humans are conditioned, and I think it's part of our DNA or something like that. But it's like there's resistance to change, there's laziness, there's ego, there's fear, there's suffering. Everything are barriers to change. Why is that? Because the people who are pulling the strings, they don't want us to change because they spent 20, 25 years of their upbringing that we are these obedience cocks in the machine. They don't want you to change. Yeah? Yeah,
Yeah.
because they made you into these obedient guys who do exactly what they wanted to do. Yeah, so it's like, but that means that in our system, in our inner system, there's a huge resistance against change. So even though I show you is like how screwed you are, you're like, yeah, but that means I can no longer blame the government or someone else. I got to look in the mirror and I got to do my work and I got to figure out these things. Yeah, yeah, you get it. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I hear you. Arnold, brother, tell the audience where they can find you, how they can reach out to you to learn more about your brain fitness stuff, and if they wanted to work with you, how they can do that.
Yes, the most easy way is my website. Yeah, it's also next to my name here in the link. It's called braingym.fitness. Yeah? That is the website. On the website, you can find the training from fitting into flying out, which I just explained. And I also have another training more for people who are already freelancers or entrepreneurs and want to start doing game changing stuff. So that's what I call from flying out to extraordinarian. That is another training program which I have, and I have some videos around specific topics, around aging, dealing with emotions, relationships, curiosity, yeah, habits. So those are around specific topics. But the main thing is the from fitting into flying out, which is I think very true for your audience as well. Yeah, the veterans. In a sense, I'm a life veteran. Yeah, so it's like,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I totally feel you guys, and I cannot imagine how it is when you're in fighting conditions, whatever. But I lived. Well, it's basically I was just preparing for this show, and I was like, I was beginning my 40s when my father died. This was the first time I had the feeling that I'm free. Yeah. And so I know what it is to get out of one certain environment and to be on your own in a total different environment. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Arnold, brother, I appreciate your time today, man. I'm super grateful you chose to come and spend an hour and tell your story and talk about what you're going on. I I love what you've got going on. It's right in line with everything that I talk about. And I think a lot of people are going to benefit from the work that you're doing. That being said, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Arnold Beeks, please help me get this in front of 1 million veterans before I turn 40 on May 9th, 2025. It's a lofty goal, but there's 19 million veterans in the United States, and there's probably another 19 million across the world. I think this show can help every single one of them understand how to open up some things to make them live better lives and stop the 22 a day. Please like, rate, review, subscribe, share, download. It takes 2 seconds to get this in front of more people. Again, Mr. Arnold Beeks from the Netherlands, really appreciate you being here, brother. Until next week, take care, everybody. We'll see you next week. That's our show, and I'm truly thankful you've joined us at The Strategic Veteran. If our conversation today sparked curiosity, or if you're ready to elevate your game, I'm here to help. Visit thestrategicveteran.com for exclusive show notes and resources, or to book a coaching session directly with me. Take a moment to subscribe to our podcast and share your review. Your support makes all the difference. For more insights and daily strategies, let's connect on LinkedIn and keep the conversation going. Remember, this isn't just a podcast, it's your strategic advantage in action. Until our next rendezvous, stay bold and continue the mission.